Cool. Okay, I'm gonna present in English today. I hope I won't suck too much, so please be understanding about it. I'm gonna present my strongly opinionated comparison of Ruby, Objective-C, and Swift. I first experienced Objective-C 5 years ago, then did some Swift, and now I'm experimenting with Swift again. So, like I said, this is a really opinionated comparison. So Swift, did any one of you already played around with Swift? Don't be shy, raise your hands. Nobody? Okay. Okay, cool. Ruby hackers all the way. So, Swift. Swift has type interface, has generics, containers that are useful, mutability. These are all things that are mostly, or I should say, we as Ruby developers are mostly used to, but Objective-C is more than 30 years old, so most of the stuff Swift now has, Objective-C still lacks. So let's begin with a small sample. We all know how to write a simple pirate class in Ruby. It's pretty simple, straightforward, nothing special. But now, if you haven't seen Objective-C code yet, brace yourselves, because this is the first part, the header file of the class, and this is the implementation file. So we see there's a lot of verbose code, a lot of unnecessary typing, which we don't like as Ruby developers, so it's basically crap. Enter Swift. Swift is kind of a mixture of both. We only have one file per class, and although it's statically typed, it brings some goodies that we can use to make our lives a bit easier. So this is a basic pirate class. How can we use that class in all the three languages? First one, straightforward. Second one is really ugly, verbose, like I said. All the methods in Objective-C are pretty descriptive, and yeah, basically you read a lot and write a lot. In Swift, things get a bit more slimmed down. It is a bit easier to do stuff, but we still have to write function parameter names. And again, it's not as clean as Ruby, but it's a lot better than Objective-C. Methods. Again, Ruby, straightforward. Objective-C, a lot of typing again, and we see that if we want to interpolate a string, it wasn't possible before in Objective-C because I don't know why, but it looked like this and it was awful. If you wanted to put a few different variables into a same string, you had to basically write a really ugly string and then append parameters at the end. So yeah, Swift has string interpolation, so yeah, that's awesome for us. And the methods are maybe a bit clearer to write. So now a few tricks. If we have a pirate array and we want to get the most experienced pirate on board, we can use the max_by function or method in Ruby. Pretty awesome, basically. In Objective-C, we do have KVC, which is key value coding, and we can basically say that we want to have the max value of the years aboard. Almost the same, but slightly different approach. In Swift, there are currently 72 standard library functions. Most of them are pretty basic, but we can accomplish the same effect here as well. So basically we map the pirates array, get all their years aboard, and call the function max element that basically accepts a sequence or an array and returns the max element. Closures, yeah, we know closures from Ruby, and there are closures in Swift as well. These three sections basically show the same thing. We sort the pirates by their years aboard. In the first section, we write a simple function. In the second section, we move that function in the expression. And in the third part, we basically leave out all the types and use the inferred type expression. So this is it. Optionals. Optionals have been debated really massively in the Swift community. Some of them are really excited about them, some of them aren't so. But basically an optional means that, like the official definition says, a value is a situation that where a value may or may not be present. And what does that mean? If we define our optional pirate class and say that the nickname, favorite drink, and all the other parameters are optional, that means that they can be nil. And if you try to display that optional nickname in a string, we see that we get an optional name and parenthesis and his name inside, and that's actually not what we wanted. So what can we do about it? First method is forced unwrapping. We can achieve that by adding an exclamation mark at the end. That basically says that, okay, I know I have a value there, and just unwrap it and display it as it is. But if the value is nil, we can have a problem and a very ugly error that doesn't explain anything. So this is the first method. The second method is optional chaining. Again, the official definition is pretty lame. Yeah, doesn't tell you anything. So let's skip to the real world example. So basically, optional chaining means that we introduce a new variable and wrap all that in an if statement, and basically we use that variable or optional variable inside that if statement. So we see in the bottom example here that if a pirate has a nickname, we just display it, else we do something else. So this is optional chaining. It can be used in classes as well. We see that an optional pirate has a parameter ship or attribute ship, which is also optional, and we see here at the bottom that problems may occur if we don't unwrap it properly. So what can we do? Again, like I said, we can just say, yeah, I'm sure the pirate has a ship, he's on a ship, just unwrap it, display the value, and if the value is present, everything is cool. If it's not, we get an error again. We can use optional chaining again. The question mark here beside the word ship means that the property is indeed an optional. So, and at the bottom we see that we can use something similar to the Boolean operator in Ruby and basically say that ship name should be the pirate's ship name, or the string ship is unnamed if the value doesn't exist. Cool stuff, yeah. You probably heard of this, but Swift supports all Unicode characters, so that means programmer happiness. Imagine looking through 5,000 lines of code with emojis in and icons and Chinese letters and stuff like that. So yeah, programming just became awesome. That's cool about Swift. What's not so cool is this. This is a real-world example of parsing a simple JSON dictionary from a network request. We see that, yeah, it's pretty horrible. I'm not even sure how I got this, but it works. A lot of code for basically nothing, but yeah, I'm sure someone could write this a bit better, but I couldn't. So. Okay, playgrounds. Playgrounds is another stuff that Apple introduced with the Xcode, and it basically means that you can write code and it gets evaluated in real time. So we'll look at this for a few minutes. Okay. Can you see it, or is it a bit small? Okay. Okay, better. So, basically, yeah, playgrounds. We see that we can define a variable or anything on the left side, and it gets evaluated on the right side in runtime. So we can write whatever here, and kapow, magic happens. Where is this useful? If we want to test a quick algorithm or a prototype or whatever, or even something, a user interface or a graphic or anything else. So let's look at how that's done. We can create a new view. Yeah, another thing, you can see that I'm using UI view classes. That's still leftovers from Objective-C. Not sure when Apple is gonna remove that and just rewrite everything in Swift, but until then, we're bound to use Objective-C classes for now. So we can create a new frame. And yeah, basically nothing interesting. You can set a background color. And we see that the view is rendered in real time. Those of you who haven't worked on iOS or Mac apps before, yeah, you have to run the app every time you want to see a change or use the interface builder. And again, you can't code anything in the user interface builder. So being able to write code and get it evaluated quickly is really awesome. We can also add a label. Set text alignment. And just add it to the view. Yay! So, yeah, this is pretty cool. If you do any rapid prototyping of interfaces, and you can also, I'll show an example. You can also test table views. So table views are used in almost every app there is. The one thing you cannot do in Playgrounds for now is basically interacting with the screen. So we can't implement any buttons, any swipes, any gestures whatsoever for now. I hope that changes in the future. Like I said, we can also show how a basic table view layout looks like with real data. Define a class. we say presenters. And like we can see here that, we said that we want to use this rug data as our table view data source, and we have to implement some methods for that. For example, number of rows, we want to return as many rows as we have presenters, and we have to configure our cell. So cell auto completion is awesome. It really helped us back in the Objective-C days, and it's certainly helpful here. We created a cell. We can say that the text label should contain the text from our presenters array. And we just return the cell. So we have our basic data structure and table view data source. All we have to do now is create the table view. Again, we set the frame. Let's say we want the frame to be exactly the same as on the iPhone 5. And we want the table to be plain. We can already preview the table view here. It's currently empty, and like I said, you cannot interact with the views for now. So we say table view data source load. Actually, we have to do it like this. And just reload the data. Yeah, and it works. Awesome. And of course, we can do some customization. We can say text label, for example, or cell background color, red color, because it's Halloween. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, playgrounds are really helpful for rapid prototyping and stuff like that. You can't actually do anything. You can't actually implement a playground in the project or use code from the playground, so you have to copy paste the code and create separate classes. But like I said, it's good for testing stuff out, algorithms, network requests, or anything that doesn't require a user interface. So that's it. Come on. Anyways, yeah, conclusion. Oh, fuck it. Is Swift better than Objective-C? Yes, I think it is. Is Swift good? I think it's good, but it's not the best. We have to consider that it is the first version, and Apple, I'm sure, will be improving it in the future, but yeah, there are still some weird problems and weird stuff going on, but is Swift here to stay? Of course. Apple is surely going to promote it, especially now when the iWatch or Apple Watch is launched. I'm sure Swift will be promoted all the way, but for any new developers, I would advise that you do a few courses of Objective-C at first, because startups especially are still using Objective-C, especially in their old projects. So if you're a new developer, probably it would be better that you start with Objective-C first. Any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I heard that you can combine Objective-C and Swift in one project.
Yeah.
Have you tried it?
Yes, I have. Basically, Xcode warns you or does something that you can write both Swift and Objective-C. It does have to be in separate files because they are compiled differently. But yeah, for example, if you have a network communication with the server, or are you doing any algorithmic work or stuff like that, you can write that in Swift and just import it to the Xcode project. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask at the same time.
Okay.
Can you use Swift to make apps for older iOS versions?
No, I think Swift is locked to Xcode 6, I think. And Xcode 6, I think the support, minimum iOS support is iOS 7.1. So, yeah.
And what about Mac?
Not sure about the Mac versions. Yeah. Apple now put a limit on the App Store, and you can't post apps that are older than or that support older versions than 7.1, I think, or 7 iOS. So yeah, basically.
Well, which one do you like better? Ruby or?
Ruby or Swift? Yeah. Ruby, of course. Yeah, Ruby is still a lot more advanced and polished, and the community is great, and there are a lot of conventions used that are still not implemented in Swift, and it's really painful to write a project in Ruby and then switch to Swift because you intuitively write stuff as simple as possible, but you get a small red exclamation mark that it's an error, and you cannot do that. So, of course, Ruby. Anything else? Okay, thanks.